Good evening, everyone. Let's open our public session, please. We've got some people that want to speak to us. Richard, you want to speak to us?
Oh, I'm first, am I?
Yes, you're on. The floor is yours.
I can only speak for myself, obviously, but I'll probably proceed with just a few comments, because I want to talk about support for the community shop. I think it's probably one of the major topics now in the village, and it hopefully the major topic here at your parish council meeting. And I think possibly the two things that come to my mind from both my experience in both work and my time with the parish council is there are councillors who can be concerned about both change and risk. And by that I mean risk in the minimal sense, not in the hairy, go out on a flight type risk. What I concluded from my time on the council and also within my work was that if you don't do change and you don't do an element of risk, things don't happen or things go backwards and things do change and you finish up with nothing, or even a negative. To be a bit more specific, I would just say I think there are a few positives that really need emphasising to those who may feel concerned about whether the change in risk is of any real consequence as you vote hopefully today. Hello, Tessa. Glad to hear. Would you like my tip? Are you sure?
Thank you very much.
I think the first point we've got to make is, in terms of convenience, that shop is going to be a huge advantage to everybody in the village, but particularly for those people who can't gain access to the major shops outside of the village. We don't have a bus service, we don't have easy access, so therefore to have people to be able to come to the shop and be able to buy the most basic provisions even on an easy basis, I think it is a huge plus to the village. It's also a great meeting point. I think everybody that's come to the shop has met somebody, had a conversation, and it's been a really good community spirit element to it. I think the management's been excellent, and that's a very central core to something being successful. It's very well managed, and of course there are so many great volunteers that have actually involved themselves in the project. A second point would be, any change like this would get rid of the horrible lavatories. Now, it's not a major point, but it is a point. I can remember when I was on the council many years ago, the council paid, I think it was £1, wasn't it, Bob, for the lavatories, because the SDC didn't want them, didn't want to clean them, and the council quite rightly bought them. But they're not a thing of beauty, are they, to say the least. I think a small point, but it perhaps against with some people, is that if we don't have a shop, this village will be less of a village, and therefore maintaining house values will not be great. Now, house values matter to some people. It's not one of my personal things, but I think house values will definitely suffer if there isn't the facility. We have a pub and we're going to have a shop. And we've always had those things, and if they diminish, I think house values will. The other thing is that the shop is increasingly profitable, and I think that could have a great effect upon what happens financially with the parish council voting in favour of the loan. I would say that the real risk is very minimal. Over the period of time we're talking about, the actual financial risk is very small. The burden on the council tax is very small, with the implications of the cost of the loan. And looking to the future, I've come to the conclusion that there is an element of advantage to the council in that if the shop makes the sort of profit it's making now, and there's no reason that it shouldn't increase, it will be in a position to take advantage of granting the parish council money for other projects. Now that in itself is a financial benefit. So all I would say to you, finally, I've only said a few words, but hopefully they have landed, that the parish council, well, its role is to improve the village and to represent the village. Yeah. And I believe that any councillor who doesn't feel that their role coincides with that position should actually do a Gavin Williamson and consider their position. Thanks.
Would you like to rephrase your last sentence, because that's rather harsh to say, Richard, to members that in other words, if they don't support it, they should resign from the council. That's rather, I think that's rather aggressive.
Well, I spoke entirely for myself.
Well, I suggest you keep it to yourself then, Richard, to be honest with you, because I think the last two comments are totally out of order. Totally.
Fine, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, who else have we got to speak?
David Gray.
David. David Gray.
If he's here.
David?
Yes. Oh, I've got David Gray written down here. I thought it was your other half, Jim.
Sorry, David.
The floor is yours.
Okay, well, I mean, most has been said that I wanted to say, and I'm not going to spend long. I just really wanted to say that I think of the village shop, if we get one, as providing two things. One, it's a facility, and secondly, it's a social community resource. And in terms of the facility, it's a facility for everybody. Now, a number of people won't use it, that's quite right. But where it is particularly important is to people who don't drive, can't drive, or haven't got a car, and this particularly is so for the older generation and the infirm. And I think that's an important issue. It provides basic commodities at a reasonable price, and I think that's a very useful thing to have locally. And what's more, in my view, it's very important to have a shop, which is the only place you'll be able to get papers from on a daily basis. If you have to drive miles and miles for your paper, you won't get it. And no one would like to read hard copy. And then there's the potential for the post office when we have a proper building. And that will be a local post office service, which again, I think is valued by most of the community. In terms of the social or community aspects, it's a place for people to meet, and this is particularly important again to the older generation, I think, who are less able to go elsewhere to socialise and so on, so they can meet locally, and that prevents isolation of a number of people in the village. Its position here is ideal, next to the parish hall, next to the green, and very near the school. So I think those are all important features. I think from the volunteers' point of view, it provides a reason, well, it provides an opportunity for people who would not otherwise be involved to actually do something for the community and feel that they're doing something for the community. And I think that's important. And of course, their input will support the viability of the shop. It's highly important. The other aspect to it is the volunteers will socialise more, they'll meet their other volunteers, and they'll meet people coming into the shop and get to know a number of them. And that is good for the community. There's a lot of people meeting each other, some of which will become friends and socialise more. The other option is a village without a shop, in my view, is a commuter village, and it's lost its soul. And basically speaking, it means that people will be isolated, there will be no social meeting amongst local people. And I think that's a major risk if we lose a shop altogether. I mean, it seems to me, and I'm going to repeat in a sense what's already been said, that as a parish council, and the councillors in particular, the job should be to promote a venture of this sort, which increases the well-being of a village. And if, as I think it has been demonstrated, that financially it can be funded and it will be viable, then I think it's an important thing to get forward. And certainly in my talking to people around the village, nearly everyone that I've spoken to has been behind this and would very much recommend it. I don't know what the numbers are of the official
You will find out.
yes, we will find out. But I would support the shop, and I hope that the committee will support the shop. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Thank you. Jamie.
Hello. I am going to talk to you a little bit about, from a slightly different angle, it's obviously been beautifully articulated, the sort of benefits for the generation above me and the generation above that. But in terms of parents, it's just so important to be able to have facilities within your village. If you choose to live rurally, you're already making a decision that you are going to have to use transport and be a taxi service for your children in the future, but being able to walk to a local shop with your children and not have to bundle them all in the car and drive to a supermarket is hugely beneficial. And we were when we came down from the northeast, we house hunted all over the area, and one of the things that drew us to Brent Knoll was the post office and the shop, because I know what it's like to be at home and really you don't want to shove them all in the car. In terms of the school, I know that my children and my friends' children and lots of the other parents at the school find it hugely beneficial to have the shop so close to the park, particularly in the summer. The children really enjoy just going in on a Friday or at the end of the week just for a little treat or coming into the shop. And it also gives them a level of independence when they're slightly older, that they can walk to their local shop. It promotes their independence, it promotes their sort of understanding of finances in sort of low-level terms. But they have enjoyed it, and I think they would actually, the kids would really miss it, I think, if it wasn't there. There's also, I think, a real opportunity to support those young people who will eventually become teenagers in this village with gaining volunteer work experience. Duke of Edinburgh, we've already supported, I think, 3 young people doing their Duke of Edinburgh voluntary work. And just as the Red Cow has offered for tens of years, I assume, there is the potential possibly to even offer part-time employment to young people that live in the village, because that's what people have been doing at the Red Cow. By all accounts, pretty much every young person that ever lived here has worked at the Red Cow at some point. And it would be nice if there was another possible avenue for that in the future. Also with the BWOT closure, it's made the village sort of more isolated than ever. And although lots of people drive, and particularly people my age, the pressures on Junction 22 have made that road really quite difficult to go in and out of if you're not particularly confident about driving or you don't drive regularly. I can imagine that trying to do that is probably not what you want to be doing, and ideally you probably wouldn't. If you only need a pint of milk, it seems a bit of a shame. Sort of lastly, I just think that in terms of disability access and the hygiene level of the toilets just needs to be much, much better. It's 2022, we need to be sort of accessible for everybody. And also the fact that the toilets will be on the side, they will be visible from the park, so children can run to and from the toilets and still be seen from where their parents are in the park if necessary. That, you know, they're always sort of dashing to and from, so I think that would be, from a safety point of view, I think that's better. But it's more the accessibility really than anything else, and that does need to be seen to, hopefully. Okay, that was it.
Thanks, Jamie. Wise words. Thank you. Michelle.
Evening, everybody. I don't really know where to stand because I don't really want my back to me, but so just another few words for me really. I'm relatively new Brent Knoll resident. One of the reasons I moved here was the checklist of pub, obviously first, shop, second, etc. And obviously as a resident and a community shop volunteer and committee member, I really just wanted to take this opportunity to really ask the councillors, please, to exercise your responsibilities in the interest of the local community this evening by voting to proceed with the community shop and public toilet proposals. For me, this feels like a bit of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the village. This isn't going to happen again in another few years if the answer's no today. For me, the proposal and the investment will provide some lovely new loos to replace existing not so nice ones, which is great, and also provide a permanent home for the community shop. The community shop will continue to provide essential service, which is highly valued by a lot of residents. I think, you know, some of the guys have already spoken about the fact that a lot of people actually now they don't want to use it, they actually now rely on it. And that's a big, big difference. I want to use it, but I can drive my car. A lot of our customers are not in that same pretty lucky position. As Jamie touched on, it provides really good volunteering opportunities. At the moment, we're perhaps an older bunch, with the exception of our D&B individuals. So I think the fact that young people could potentially get work experience opportunities in a challenging time and in a rural area is really important. And obviously the shop will continue to run our community events to increase socialisation for lots of different groups of people that actually, you know, the village serves the community really well in terms of the village hall having events and other community groups. This is an addition to that. It doesn't take away all of the other great stuff that's going on. It's an addition which is super valuable. The permanent building obviously also unlocks that opportunity for a post office, to bring a post office back, a service back to Brent, which is dearly missed, I know, by a lot of people. In addition to that, it will provide us with the stability, basically to unlock other community initiatives, so some of the funding things that obviously Richard mentioned earlier. I believe that the wider community have, by majority, who've engaged in the various stages of our consultation processes throughout this iterative process, have shown support in the main for these proposals. Please, please don't waste the investment of time and money that's gone into this project so far. And please don't let this fantastic community-led, community-focused initiative fall by the wayside at this really important point. Thank you so much for listening, and I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Tessie, you were in late. Do you want to add anything from your experience of working? Of course you can.
I don't actually promise Bob I wouldn't say anything.
You're allowed.
That's very sweet, thank you. I was just making some notes, and I was thinking, I'm an ex-volunteer. I haven't really been in since May. Well, I've been to the shop since May, but I haven't actually worked in the shop since probably April in reality, actually. But it was 2 Aprils ago that somebody in the village phoned me and said, we need you to come and work in the shops. I said, okay, fine, right. And I suppose what I think is that this village has done so brilliantly in actually keeping the shop going when it was up the road there, and then in a lightning move over a weekend, sort of getting everything re-established down in the car park down here. And, you know, and I was nothing to do with that lightning move, I have to tell you. I watched from a distance. but the thing that's key to me is that it's actually managed to keep going. And once you lose a facility, it's incredibly hard to get it back. And I think the thing that your village has done is actually kept it going, and now it needs to grow a little bit more. And I suppose, you know, I've seen it be a massive support to people who've had tough times. And I know it's a great place for people to come and just recharge their batteries, and their emotional batteries, as well as being able to get the bananas that they need or whatever it is on a Monday morning or whatever. But it's also a place where you've supported local businesses and local community groups, haven't you? We had the Bags for Life, was it last Christmas or whatever, which was absolutely fantastic. You supply the eggs are supplied by Westcroft, and I know that Paul does the picking up of the eggs or whatever. It's propping up local businesses as well, so it just strengthens the whole community. You just keep tucking more into your community all the time, and I just think that can't be missed. And I suppose the opportunity to have some lovely loo would be really nice. So I presume that will, when the cabin goes, then you'll have some more parking spaces, because I've just parked in a slightly ludicrous fashion. I'm sorry for the person whose van I'm blocking in. Sorry. But it will create a little bit of extra parking, which is probably needed, isn't it? And I suppose I was sitting here thinking, what is the risk for the parish